And welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to this session. My name is Andreas Beckman. I'm the regional CEO of Circularity in Central and Eastern Europe. The war in Ukraine has already had massive impacts on individual lives, on infrastructure, but also on the environment in Ukraine. But at some point, this awful war will end. And if there is one very, very slender silver lining of this awful situation, it's that the opportunity to build back better. And that's what we want to focus on today. To use the opportunity not simply to reconstruct the past, but to invest in building and restoring a better future. What are the prospects for this? What will be needed to build back better, to ensure that support for rebuilding and restoration in Ukraine is an investment in a better, sustainable future? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Joining me today to provide their insights on this are three experts. Glad to have with me Dr. Bogdan Vichor, CEO of WWF Ukraine, my colleague. Also Alina Sokolenko, the head of the ASDE, the Association of Sustainable Development Experts, has a number of other hats as well, but that's one of them. And another person who has a number of hats is Dr. Olena Maslukivska. One of the hats is as Associate Professor at the Department of Environmental Studies at the National University of Kiev-Mohyla Academy. And you're welcome to introduce any of your other hats later on if you want to yourselves. Each of the speakers comes to us with specific experience and perspectives and expertise that will help us illuminate relevant issues related to reconstruction and the environment. What we're going to do today is to start by surveying some of the environmental impacts of this war, move on to look at the current state of preparations of planning for reconstruction, for restoration afterwards. And then we'll move on to consider some key issues related to building back better. And we're going to open the last part of the session to questions and comments from participants. So let me start, let's start with an overview of the environmental impacts of this war. And let me start by turning first to Bogdan. What have been some of the greatest impacts of the war on nature and biodiversity in particular?
Yeah, whereas the war in the country, not only people struggling, but all environment. And in this particular place, the war happening on the north, east, and the south part of Ukraine. Those areas quite rich on biodiversity due to diverse climate condition. And for example, here in Ukraine, war affected on 14 Ramsar sites, area of near 400,000 hectares, home for many species, mainly birds and another water-dependent animals. And in this case, it created a lot of turbulency, noise, and uncertainty to them, and prevent them from usual space for feeding, breeding, and migration pathways. In addition to that, also Emerald Network also affected by military activities, which is up to 3 million of hectares under threat of lose the connectivity and those ecological patterns they provide for wildlife and also for people. And it's threatening rare species survival and ecosystem services.
Okay.
And not only Ramsar site affected and Emerald Network, over 900 protected areas, which is 1/3 of protected areas on the territory of Ukraine, were under military activities here in the country, which means that those virgin nature were under threat of those military destruction also. And at the end, many of protected areas workers could not provide their duties on nature protection and conservation. And unfortunately, a lot of animals became victims of poachers and also were killed during military activities or blow out on mines. Of course, these military activities and war also pollute air, water, and those poisoning of nature and biodiversity will continue in the future.
Bogdan, maybe you can just add, I mean, WWF Ukraine has a lot of field projects, for example, forest protection. What has been the impact on those field projects? I mean, the work that you do as an organization for nature protection?
Just in case, on the eve of the war, we planned to reintroduce bison to the Chernobyl Biosphere Reserve, but just because the war, we stopped the project, despite everything was ready. And regarding the forest conservation of WWF Ukraine, we actively work on the left side of Ukraine in the Polisia region and also on the central part of Ukraine for identification and protection of old growth forest. But unfortunately, those work was stopped, paused, or postponed due to impossibility to visit those field areas due to danger to the health and life.
Okay, thanks. That gives us a sense of some of the impacts on nature and wildlife, which we usually don't see so much in the pictures on the television or in photographs in the media. Ones that we do see are more the impacts on cities, on infrastructure, and those, of course, also have environmental ramifications. Olena, could you tell us a bit about some of the environmental impacts from that perspective? You're mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, Andreas. I really would like to add that we all understand that when people are killed by fighting, by shelling, the same happens with the natural environment. But we have to understand that as buildings, human habitats are being destroyed, so are the habitats of species and living beings. And indeed, nature is the silent victim of war. Still, we need to understand that besides of the immediate effect on the living beings, we have a lot of pollution that comes from, first of all, explosion, ammunition, destruction of military equipment. You've probably seen a lot of picture of this rusting Russian tanks. And you know, this is the pollution that comes to the soil, to the water. Many of the tanks are in the water. Then we have the most of the cases reported by the citizens are the destruction of the environmental damage to the environment, are the cases of the destroyed industry. So that could be chemical enterprises, there could be warehouses with chemicals or toxic materials. There could be destruction of the wastewater plants. Just think about the big city like Mariupol. And when the wastewater treatment plant is destroyed, all that discharged wastewater is going directly to the streams, and there are already cases of the infection diseases, diseases like diphtheria that basically are caused by the waterborne diseases. That's not it. Of course, we see lots of forest fires, and unfortunately, despite the fact that the emergency services of Ukraine are also heroes, and they are doing everything possible to put down the fires, but sometimes they don't have the access to the forests, and especially like in Chernobyl zone, because of the mines, because of the active military actions. And that adds to the overall negative impact for the environment and health. And of course, Bogdan mentioned that, you know, there are kind of administrative related damages, and indeed many natural protected areas could not, and managers of the natural protected areas couldn't take care of the animals, but also many other resources in Ukraine, many other kind of assets could not be maintained. And we see the cases when there are solar power plants are being damaged and they could not be repaired. Of course, it will have an impact, indirect impact to the fact that as the war is in the southern part, and there are lots of capacities of the renewable energy, solar panel, windmills, we can see that they are not only destroyed, but no new investments will be coming. So we can speak about these diverted resources. So instead of investing into renewable energy capacity, you know, we are fighting the war, we are spending money for killing other people that come to our land. And this is so wrong. Instead of investing also into energy efficiency, Ukraine had huge plan for the energy efficiency of its buildings and industry. Lots of international organizations worked in Ukraine on that. So now all of that, basically all those resources are now diverted to the very destructive activity. I'm not even talking about investment in science and technology and education, something that really is important for the sustainable development.
So we have a whole host of direct impacts.
I can go on and on, but I'll stop here in case there are.
Great. I'll pass over to you, to Alina, in just a moment, if you have anything to add to that. But just, I mean, just to point out, I mean, we have this direct impacts on nature, on the environment, directly to air, to water, to land, as you said, in terms of pollution, pollution that will be with us for years. And then at the same time, you have this indirect impact in terms of also diverting the not only the attention but also valuable resources from addressing these situations. Alina, would you like to add anything to what's been said so far on this?
Actually, I think that we can add because we have currently a human challenge which we faced here in Ukraine, and it's not only about environmental threats or well-being threats, or it's about in general. I believe that it's covering all the spheres of our well-being. It's economical, it's financial, it's agro production, it's food production, it's energy sector. Actually, it's all industries, all spheres of our life, starting from person attitude up to the international cooperation on the government level and international companies and so on. And here we are facing, Ukraine and all other countries are facing global direct threats and indirect threats. If we can see direct threats connected with economic threats, then environmental, physical, for example, the loss of our territory, the loss of nature. At the same time, we can observe the increasing of the price of natural resources. I mean, like a fuel, I mean the electricity and everything what is connected with that. It's supply chain that is currently they are broken, and it means that if we have not appropriate supply chain, it means that all the harvest which we have in Ukraine is in Ukraine. We cannot transfer it to other countries. And if to see the data, around only 5% of train and auto we can use to transfer our food production and agriculture production abroad, and all this food are staying here in Ukraine. And it means that about our next wheels and so on. So it's only very, very small from agro perspective, but we can give more and to see that there will be also like another threats, like a social economy threats, then low nutrient food. At the same time, we will face the social and gender inequalities at the same time. Again, more should be speaking about financial support and everything what is connected with investments, but I will speak about that further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot. It gives us a sense of some of the challenges from this war, specifically with regard to the environment. Let's consider just for a moment just the current status of preparations for what happens after the war. The Ukrainian government has a process, a planning process underway. Bogdan, I think you and your colleagues are engaged in that. I think Alina as well, and perhaps Alina as well. Starting with Bogdan, can you give us a sense of where is that process? How is it working?
The National Council on Post-War Reconstruction of Ukraine was created by decree of President Zelensky, and it contains 23 working groups which are dealing with different topics from euro integration, finance, socio-economical approaches, military to agro-environment, security, and also energy sector. Of course, WWF actively engaged in those working groups which are dealing with our portfolio and those work we are interested to do and contribute from our personal perspective. For example, we actively participated in the working group on environmental security here in Ukraine. And the work was organized in such ways that during several days, each organization or participant would like to contribute to those working groups should submit some project proposal on post-war reconstruction or restoration of Ukraine. But from another point of view, another approach might be used to solve existing problems. It might be visioning approach, when we could discuss how we see Ukraine in the future and what we need to do to reach those goals. Or another approach may be taken is to analyze list of all existing problems which we have in the field of environment. For example, those which we had before the war and those which was created during the war. And having those list of problems, we could find common solution of those environmental problems, for example, and jointly build our vision of a post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. Fortunately, those approach was not used, but nevertheless, based on those project proposal, there was created series of recommendation on post-war reconstruction of Ukraine, which was analyzed and generated in one solid document, which will be probably presented by Ukrainian government in the post-war reconstruction conference in Lugano, which will took place at the beginning of July, where different donors, partners, and organizations will be presented, and it will be quite interesting to listen what was possible to create under framework of those working groups. But of course, it will be the first drafts, and there will be a lot of questions. And I guess the main mission of those meetings in Lugano to receive feedback, what is good, what is wrong, and to accumulate best knowledge and experience to improve those basic solid document on post-war reconstruction of Ukraine.
Thanks, Bogdan. So we'll get a first glimpse, I guess, in the beginning of July, I think the 4th and 5th of July, Lugano. Olena, we had a chance just to have a brief chat before this session, and we touched on this. We didn't have enough time to get into it very much, but I know this is also a process that you've been following. What's your perspective?
Well, I have to compliment the Ukrainian government who took this bottom-up approach, and really these 23 working groups mobilized an immense number of experts from universities, research think tanks, businesses. It's really, all Ukrainians are kind of committed, and they do want to build now a new country that uses the best from their research field, right? So I actually been also following the group in the economic development and also in finances. It just, as you said, I wear many hats. What I can say that that's really a good process, because of the involvement. But of course, take into account the shortage of time, and it's only like less than 2 months essential to prepare this gigantic Ukraine recovery plan with the pipeline of the project. So it's not about just policy reforms, but it's about real projects with the cost estimates, with the implementation. And, as much as I admire the process, I kind of sympathize those people who put in everything together, because sometimes, because of the shortage of discussion times, the, kind of very eclectic ideas were discussed. I will not give the examples, but sometimes I'm thinking, how can you marry apples and oranges, or even not, or even like apples and even like, flowers. So that's my comment on that. But it has mobilized the community, it has generated lots of projects, and I think it's up to the government now and people from the reform support teams that support this process to kind of trying to make sense out of those projects. So let's see what we will end up with. Great,
thank you. Let's dig into that, whether they will be in the final government proposal that is tabled in Lugano or not. What do you think should be in there? Maybe I can turn first to Alina regarding an area that you are well versed in. You've got a long experience working in agriculture and sustainability and agriculture, including in the agri-industry for many years. From your perspective, what is needed in agriculture going forward?
Before speaking about agriculture, I would like also to comment a little bit, just a couple of words about this group that, as Olena told already, that a lot of experts involved in these working groups, and from our association also there were a couple of experts who are intensively working to put on the agenda circularity and some green economy transition and so on, because it's our future and we need to think about that. But at the same time, we need to also think about the damages which we already have. And there are a lot of other experts who are involved in the other types of group, for example, for damages calculation and methodology approach. Currently, there's like two main activities. From one hand, there is the groups who are working intensively to calculate the damage and to find out the ways how Ukraine can obtain these how to say, it's like reparations, yeah. And from other hand, there is big groups that are hardly working on recovery, how we will recover our economy and on what principles it will be recovered, like on the principle of sustainable development, because we hear all are speaking about this sustainability. And I truly believe that it will be on the main issue in the strategy. So coming back to the agriculture production, really agricultural production and food production is very important for Ukraine, because Ukraine is leading the key role in the global key role, because it's not only about our country, but also about the other neighborhood countries, like European countries. But the most important also is African countries. You know that our crops and wheats, they are going to the Africa. And now when we are talking about the damages, we need to think about the damages globally. Yeah, we need to think about food crisis, about the agricultural production and all this supply chain that are currently damaged. And we don't know how much time it will take to recover it. And therefore it should be focused on the agricultural production and how to recover it, which methods we need to imply here now, and what we need to do in the future. For example, if we will see the picture of our agricultural production. So from one hand, we have the war, and from other hand, we still have the climate change. You know, the climate change, it didn't disappear, because we have two global threats, and we need to combine them and to find solution for all of these challenges. Yeah, and therefore, when we are thinking about the agricultural production, we need to think about the full cycle, starting from the field up to the consumer, at the beginning to the end. And definitely, for the strategy, Ukraine should be the not only raw material producer, but the added value producer. And our president put the direct message that Ukraine should focused on the local producers and at the same time to think about the added value products here in Ukraine. And therefore, now and here we need to think about and to implement some sustainability decision in agro-production cycle. But it cannot be without financial support, without communication with financial institutions and improving sustainability principles inside decision-making process. So I believe, yeah.
Elena, can I just push you on that? What is needed for that sustainability? I mean, what are the key steps that would need to be taken or taken into consideration also by financial institutions to ensure that agro industry is more sustainable?
Yeah, at the beginning when the Russian aggression, the financial market actually frozen, and our agriculture producers, they need the money for loans for their operational activities. They need to raise their liquidity. Currently, all the producers, agricultural producers, they are faced a global challenge when they have a lot of products on their facilities. It is stored on the elevators and so on, but they don't have money for the next yield, and therefore there is no running cycle of the products, because we have a huge amount of products inside Ukraine and it's stuck here and we cannot transfer it abroad. And our farmers, they're thinking about where to get a new products for the next harvest, and they're thinking about the costs and the money we are taking from, because still the investments is only somewhere after the war, but not now, not currently, and we need support here and now in different types of cooperation. Yeah.
Thanks, Elena. We can turn over to Alina.
Yeah, I just want to illustrate also with the agriculture. Basically, I want to add that the current version of the recovery plan, how it has been conducted, it was kind of very quick. But I think what it lacked this mastermind behind that would actually push all the projects, all these projects in the pipeline to be transformative, to transform Ukrainian economy, to do something that we have been dreaming for 30 years. This is our chance in all areas, in education, in medicine, and especially in the environment and agriculture. However, I doubt that actually these plans are as transformative. And actually, I would like to see the process of really pushing the boundaries so that Ukraine could leapfrog from the state that we were, like say we had metallurgy or metallurgic plants that built in 19th century, and we can leapfrog to the investments into the newer technology which pollute less, right? And with the agriculture, one example that I keep thinking about, the Ukrainian conservation group just wrote an article what to do with some of the land, plots of land which were severely bombed. And actually, they are full of holes. So basically, the soil is very condensed. It's not as productive, and it's polluted. No one in Europe would like to eat their croissants with with heavy metals, right? And instead of, what to do with that. And I didn't at least see in the discussion that what the best way of managing those lands is just leave them alone. This is what France did, and they call it the red zones. And now in those, holes, there are, small ecosystems, water ecosystems, and, and it doesn't cost anything. Besides, probably you've heard that Ukraine considers to be the breadbasket of Europe. And we have the highest percentage of the agricultural lands and the plowed lands, to the way that it's not environmentally sustainable. So now when the world speaks about food security, and yes, there is a food crisis, and because some of the territories of Ukraine are now occupied, or we don't have access to them. So what will Ukrainians do? They will plow more land. which will increase the percentage of this plowed lands, which is again not sustainable. And I see that we don't have the mastermind that says, hey, let's think whether we really need to do that and guide maybe farmers and as agricultural enterprises, because otherwise this will be the same extensive way of economy. And I am aware of the food crisis, I am aware of the hungry people, but we can try to think of the way how we can not continue developing extensively. You see, that's only one example that I wanna bring, and I hope that after Lugano there will be comments from our European partners saying, hey, why don't you bring circularity into the system? Do you know how many buildings have been destroyed? What number of trash, of garbage is there? But now think how many raw materials we will need to have to rebuild those buildings. I have statistics on the city of Irpin. This is one of the Kyiv satellites. And basically it says that 80% of the buildings have been destroyed. And it's, I think, 5,000 people don't have anywhere to return. And it means that we want to rebuild those buildings to let people in, but it means that we will destroy entire ecosystems because we need sand, that's a local resource, gravel, and everything else. And think how much we will need then heavy technology that will go back and forth and try to manufacture, build, and the environmental impact will be huge. And we really need to make an effort in thinking how to reduce this environmental impact. What do you?
Great, thanks a lot. That's what I was wanting to get at from you. Thank you. Maybe
just one comment.
Yeah.
Can I? Yeah, because it was just key message which you wanted to add, because here we are facing this mindset actually of our people, and normally people used to think that sustainability or something environmental, it's a very cost efficiency program or solutions or whatever, but we need to think and to understand the sustainability is about the increasing capitalization of the companies. It's about cost efficiency methods. It's about opportunities. It's about development. And only after that, when we will put it in our minds, we will increase our production and we will come closer to the circularity and still, like the circularity is about to do better rather than sustainability is not harm. Yeah, so it's very nice to come from sustainability to circularity actually. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks. I want to come back to circularity in just a moment, but let me just mention that you're welcome to the participants here are welcome to make any comments, but also questions. I can't see them right now, but there's a streaming, those joining us through streaming, there is a chat function, so you can use that and we'll pick up some of those questions in the last 20 minutes that we have for this session. Back to circularity, and maybe back to you, Olena. Buildings, you mentioned infrastructure, you mentioned Irpin, the satellite city of Kiev that you mentioned as well. Not only do we have all this waste, which is enormous in terms of resources, but then also the new resources that are needed for this. Great circularity, but how do we actually? What are the practical steps that we can that are needed to drive that forward to use these resources in a better way?
That's a €1 million question, Andres, but I think what should be done, first of all, is to introduce the circularity, and in a very practical means that from all that destroyed buildings, some of them will be demolished completely, but then the companies who will do demolition, they could be required to have a certain percentage of the recovered bricks. That's what the Nordic countries have been doing, municipalities have been doing for some time. So in using the public procurement system, Prozoro, introduce circularity criteria, such as the percentage of the bricks which should be recycled from demolishing the buildings. And the same with renovating the buildings. There should be criteria for the public procurement that clearly says that in construction or renovating that building, a certain percentage what should be used recyclable materials, not only bricks, but any other materials. This also will actually, boost the development of other companies that could produce materials from the recyclables. And I think that will be also very important. And of course, so that's why I think the easiest way how to kickstart that is to work with the public procurement. So first we have to bring back the competitive public procurement and then work with criteria, which are quite simple. They just need to be introduced into the tenders, and then let the companies, the best company, or maybe criteria could be who can, kind of recover more bricks or more materials. So that's something that needs to be discussed, but it's not rocket science. It's already being used in many European countries. Yeah, that's what I strongly believe. And it's, public procurement before the war was 13% of the GDP. Now I think it will be even bigger. Microphone. Hey, Andreas, microphone.
Okay. It just leaves me with a question, and I want to go on to Bogdan and touch on some other issues. But just the question to you, Olena, I mean, this was a struggle before the war, and now I wonder, does the war change things so that it makes those steps easier, or does it make it even more difficult than it was before? Should I be optimistic, or should I be pessimistic?
I think both. I think you should be pessimistic because, like during the war, we don't have like transparent public procurement because it's war. Many laws are being adopted under the closed doors in the parliament, even laws that don't have anything to do with the war. So why should it be closed, like discussed under the closed doors? Things like that. So even after the war, we will obviously have the priority to renew infrastructure, to build roads, to build buildings, and any environmentalist who would say, hey, let's do environmental impact assessment. There is already a draft law in the parliament that says, so let's postpone the law on environmental impact assessment. Or let's postpone the law and not do the strategic environmental assessment on the document. So even the recovery plan should ideally go through the strategic environmental assessment, because that's the cornerstone of integrating environmental considerations into the sectoral policies. And of course, Ukrainian politicians, I think not there yet. And this is the bad news. The good news that we are dealing, and our partners are from the European Union, United Kingdom, United States, and these countries have very strong environmental safeguards, and they observe and they will make sure that, and no company will invest into the project that doesn't have environmental impact assessment. No government, I hope, European government will allocate money for the program, which will not go through the strategic environmental assessment. So that's my hope. And of course, there could be kind of excuses saying, "Hey, we really need to speed up," but I think we're at the end. We cannot afford to speed up here. We really need to build a better country, the country of our dreams. We cannot afford living in the old, not energy efficient buildings, or build them next to the cattle farms. Without proper zoning, without proper documentation in place. We cannot afford that. There will be no plan B for this country. There will be no another rebuilding of this country. And this is our chance. And I think we have to convey this message to Ukrainian politicians, to our European partners, that including very concrete actions to ensure circularity, to ensure environmental safeguards, ensuring that all the new policies for sectors will for sure have environment integrated. So you probably know too that environmental NGOs, they provided 7 recommendations, 7 principles to the recovery plan. and it's all there. It's not again a rocket science. I think it just needs to be translated into decision making and to the actually investments. And I hope jointly with the European partners, American partners, we'll be able to transform these investments to really be done the way it should be done.
Great. I want to come back to that at the end. So you've already touched on a lot of those topics, but before we do that, just to go touch on forests, Bogdan, again, you and your colleagues are working on forests quite a bit in terms of protection, also management. What do you see going forward? How do you see forests and what is needed?
Yeah, I think since the beginning of war, 600,000 forests were affected by military activities, and there is increasing demand on forest product like wood, which is needed for reconstruction work, which is needed for army needs, which is needed for as a food. So quite high demand compared to those times which was before the war, and also those changes in the market of food production, which create a huge threat to existence of forest as ecosystem here in Ukraine, and may increase potential problems in the future. And the main problem which we have is that there is not public access of the civil society to those permission of forest cuts. There is a huge problem which we are facing now, and there are no possibility to visit even forests to check whether those existing cuts goes according to the certain rules, and it creates cascades of problems from one side, but also provides solution from another side. Here in Ukraine, especially on the north part of Ukraine, which was affected by military activities, we have climate unresilient monodominant forest, mostly created artificially by pine, and they are super sensitive to the draggage and also to the forest fires because they are not climate resilient and created by humans. It provides us opportunity for implementation of nature-based solutions and selective forest cuts. And on the place of those cutted trees, we could plant another one, not pine, but another variety of trees, deciduous forest, for example, oak, acer, or another species for those climate zone. And in this particular case, this is a unique opportunity to create the forest, new forest, which will be resilient for potential climate changes in the future. And from another perspective, there are huge potential for agroforestry here in Ukraine because the demand for forest will be increased, as I mentioned earlier. And another approach, creating forest belt in those agro landscapes, because it's known from scientific point of view that having those forest belt as nature-based solutions, we could increase the fertility of the soil, contamination of the water, and so on. And it have positive economic impact. Despite we have some problems, but it provide to us unique chance to implement nature-based solution here in the forestry and to change those forests for better. It's unique chance and we could not miss this. And as WWF Ukraine, we actively advocate for implementation close to the nature forestry and nature-based solutions in everyday forest work. And of course, crucial is the transparency of forest system and giving civil society and other interested parties to have open access to those data related to the forest cutting.
Thank you, Bogdan. There's one topic that I think is really important in this context of the war, as a driver for the war, unfortunately, but also beyond and certainly relevant for climate change, and that is the whole topic of energy. Olena, can you say something about energy going forward in terms of what are the key things that need to happen going forward?
Yes, well, again, as with the previous arguments, there are good news and bad news. The good part, 16, Ukraine became a member of the energy system of European Union, synchronizing completely. It's great with the continental Europe, and we cut our electricity grid from both Russian Federation and Belarus. That's a good news. And in June, the EU, the European energy system operators agreed for the gradual expansion of Ukraine's net electricity export capacity, which means that we can trade our electricity. And because European Union has this commitment to become the first carbon neutral continent by 2050, of course, Europe would like to have clean energy. So that's kind of a good news. Then also a week ago, I saw a press release of the Minister of Energy stating that as of June 8th, I'm quoting, the share of the clean energy, which includes nuclear, hydro, wind, solar, and biofuel in the energy balance reached 87.4%. 87.4%. If just compared to the pre-war numbers, we had about 46, 48 nuclear, 46, 48 carbon generated energy, and then the rest, depending on the season, are renewables, hydro and solar and wind. So because many heat plants that used coal, they were destroyed, and also because we have smaller demands. So currently we have this beautiful balance, it's 87.4%. But the bad side is that actually when Ukraine will start rebuilding, when people will start coming back to their places, when they will be, buying new equipment, more equipment, we will need more electricity for the construction. And the question, where do you get that electricity? Of course, Ukraine has in the plans to build more nuclear power plant blocks. That's actually kind of a decision that is, I don't know to what extent of approval, but it's there. But of course, building a nuclear power plant takes, maybe a decade or so, based on the experience. But it means that we will need to generate electricity somehow, and probably that would be, again, coal. I don't know, really, I don't have the information what the Minister of Energy is thinking, but definitely we cannot provide enough renewable electricity for the recovery period of Ukraine. We need to plan for the future, but in the nearest 5 years, I'm sure that we will be seeing an increase in burning coal. Well, at the end, we will have not as many coal burning power plants, because they were destroyed, but we will be reconstructing and building new just because we need electricity.
At the same time,
yeah. Go ahead.
At the same time, I suppose you have the opportunity to rebuild in a way that's more energy efficient, both industry but also residential buildings, for example.
That's for sure.
Can decrease that. Okay.
Yeah, especially the buildings. I totally agree with you. Ukraine was going to invest in the reconstruction of the extremely energy and efficient buildings. So now these buildings have been destroyed, and now the new buildings will be, of course, more energy efficient, and hopefully the construction materials will be used also those that basically provide more thermal isolation. So that's an important factor, but we still need to not to be very overly optimistic that Ukraine will need energy. Ukraine will need to destroy ecosystem for the building materials, and that's basically that's the result of the war. I don't see how we can change. We cannot relocate all those people whose buildings have been destroyed in Europe. Some people will of course stay, but the majority is returning and will be returning.
Great, thanks a lot. We're coming to a close slowly. I want to come back to, I guess, something that Elena said before regarding the role of those outside of Ukraine. There's people joining this session. I think a lot of them are especially outside of Ukraine. and this is a question to all of you, what do you look to other countries, to other people, to other companies, and so on? What can we do to support this move for progress and the move to sustainability in Ukraine? As individuals, as companies, as countries, as governments, maybe as international organizations, as the European Commission, what can we do? Maybe start with Alina.
Yeah, actually, I'll be very short. It's very good time for Ukraine for new opportunities, actually, because even in the deepest crisis, in the deepest time, there could be a nice future, but everything depends on us. And I believe it's time of ecosystem solutions. It's time of partnership solutions. And here we can collaborate with international companies to strengthen our local producers. Here we can put efforts in new technologies as well. We can develop new industries and try to focus on international approach, to take best available techniques and methods and to implement it here in Ukraine. We have a lot of smart people here, and even here on this webinar and on other activities that every day we are here, that there is some NGOs or working groups creating to recover Ukraine. And it's not only Ukrainian people, it's there are a variety specialists from different countries. And I believe that here the common value of sustainability and the sustainable future will bring this skills, education and everything, all the how to say the skills to one hands, and to for development, and to put the strategic decision of Ukraine to move forward for the to European Union. And I believe that our partners will support us, and Ukraine will be in the European Union as well.
And it looks like it's moving in that direction. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bogdan, what about you? What do you expect, want, wish from all of us?
So I wish Ukraine listen deeply what is going around, and to those advisors of developing country which put the nature first. Of course, Ukraine should innovate fearlessly to implement best knowledge available in the world, to build back better, new way, and of course, create new ways of better future for everybody, and strive for impact, because if you concentrated and dedicated to your goal, your mission, and would like to change not only your life for better, but also life of your country, nothing will prevent you for success. So I suggest, and the Ukraine have the same attitude in post-war restoration after war.
Thanks, Bogdan. Last wish from you, Olena, shortly.
Well, I want to address our European and international colleagues. So if you work in the research area, so if you have good methodologies how to restore natural ecosystems, I know that Sweden does it, let us know, and let's apply your years of your research trying to restore natural ecosystems in Ukraine. If you are in business, go ahead and find suppliers in Ukraine. This way you will meaningfully support companies working in Ukraine, but also you will help them to basically to get on your level in terms of environmental considerations and safeguards. You know, find yourself a supplier from Ukraine, and I think that would be very meaningful support. And there's no need to bring, you know, humanitarian aid. You know, as Alina likes to say, don't give me the fish, give me the rods to fish, right? So, and finally, of course, we have. I really would hope that our European partners, and I know they do understand that, but they will find a common language as our government. Trying to convince that it's a time not only to be brave and willful and free, but it's also a time to live up to the expectations of the millions of Ukrainians who are together fighting this war, not only in the battlefield, but also being like working properly, like, you know, communal services, or like people who are abroad trying to do everything possible to help the country. And the expectations are that we don't want to just join the EU. That's not the point. The point is that we want to have a life in a free country, full of dignity and opportunities to unleash our creative potential. And for that, government needs to set the framework, to have the setting so that all this creativity, which actually has been exemplary, absolutely amazing over the last month, that this creativity is now transformed into the rebuilding Ukraine.
Thank you, Olena. Good final words. I think that leaves me just to finalize this session, and just to say that I think this pointless war is in many ways an unmitigated disaster. But I think there's one positive thing that's come out of it, and that is that it has brought Ukraine closer to the world, and the world closer to Ukraine. And this is one of those examples. Many thanks to the panelists, Dr. Bogdan Vichor, Dr. Olena Maslukiewska, and Alina Sokolenko for sharing your insights with us. Many thanks to the organizers of this webathon, to GlobeScan, CSR Europe, and CSR Ukraine, and all the other partners that made this possible. And many thanks to those who have donated or are about to donate to Ukrainian civil society organizations. Your support makes a difference, not only in terms of the material support you give, but also the moral support, which at this time is especially also important. And then finally, many thanks to you, the participants, for your interest and engagement. What's happening in Ukraine right now is relevant not only to Ukrainians, it's also relevant to many more of us around the world. Thank you very much. Over to you, Petka.